Is this thing on? Oh, it is. Good morning. I am Doug LeBow, and a year of spiritual practice. Spiritual practice. I love that. You know, spiritual practice, I'm going to be talking this morning about what I call the way in. Spiritual practice is so important because like anything that we do, when we practice it, we become better at it. And it becomes more second nature to us, or first nature, depending on how we practice it. The first time that we ride a bicycle, it's not so easy. But you can go without riding a bicycle for 20 years and then get on later, and it's very easy again. So we will talk about spiritual practice. And it's February, if you can believe that. Is this the winter of our discontent? Some people back east are having a really hard time right now. But it is February. And it's been crazy global change weather this February. Let's see, what else happens in February? February 2nd is Groundhog Day. That's also Sharon's and my anniversary. 23 years we've been married. And Groundhog Day is a metaphysical holiday because, you know, the groundhog comes out, sees a shadow, and then he decides whether we're going to have 6 more weeks of winter or whether it's going to be an early spring. So I think he's been reading The Power of Decision by Raymond Charles Barker. I want to thank Dr. Maureen for asking me to come and speak today, and also thanks to Reverend Sandra for suggesting me to Dr. Maureen, and thanks Mitch for the music, and thanks Joyce for introducing me. Reverend Sandra and I and Reverend Sharon went through ministerial school together, and also Reverend Michael and Sandra and Sharon and I all went through our intensive up at Asilomar together. So for me right now, the most exciting thing going on in February is the Olympics. Anybody been watching the Olympics? Are you excited by the Olympics? I'm an Olympic junkie, actually. I love the Olympics. I went to high school with a guy named Jeff Tucker who was on the 1980 bobsled team in Lake Placid, New York. And my friend Craig Lincoln from NoHo won a bronze medal in diving in Munich in 1972. I'm an Olympic junkie. I really like to watch it. And there's just something innately spiritual about these young athletes and what they do living their entire lives from a place of no limitations. We talk about no limitations as metaphysicians in our spiritual work all the time. There's no limitations, anything's possible. But these kids are actually living their lives from a place of no limitations every day. Dr. Holmes teaches that principle is not bound by precedent, meaning that anything that's happened before does not necessarily have to influence whatever can happen now. These athletes every day from a place of knowing that the records that exist are meant to be broken. That every time they practice their particular sport, they're going out to do that, to break a perceived limitation. Now, interesting story. May 1954, so 60 years ago, an Englishman named Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile for the first time. He ran it in 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds. Before that, runners had been attempting to break the 4-minute mile for hundreds of years, unsuccessfully. The accurate stopwatch wasn't invented till around 1700. So think about that, from 1700 to 1954, 254 years, runners thought it was virtually impossible to break the 4-minute mile. Everybody believed that until they didn't. In religious science, we call that race consciousness. Things like, oh, it's a bad economy. There's no jobs out there. I can't possibly do that. That's what we call race consciousness. When we agree with things that everybody seems to agree with and we allow ourselves to believe it, and when we believe it, we make those experiences happen in our lives. We call that manifesting what we believe. So less than 1 year after Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, someone else did too. And today, the world record sits at 3 minutes, 43.13 seconds. That's almost 17 seconds faster than 4 minutes. That's just in the last 60 years. And for 300 years before that, people were trying to break the 4-minute mile. They thought it was virtually impossible for the human being to run faster than that. Today, it's actually so common that hundreds of people have done it, and some of them have done it while they're still in high school, broken the 4-minute mile. So we evolve, and so does our consciousness. Our consciousness evolves too. That which we think we can accomplish also evolves. Anthony Robbins said, "The only impossible journey is the one that you never begin. The only thing that's impossible is something that you don't try to do. When you believe that something's possible, it can be. People sometimes say, have you heard someone say, oh, I'll believe it when I see it? I'll see it when I believe it is really the metaphysical truth. Not I'll believe it when I see it. Oh, I'll believe that when I see it. No. When I see it in here, then I'll see it out here. That's the way that we believe the metaphysical universe works. Impossible is spelled exactly the same as I'm possible. And Dr. Holmes teaches that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Believing in something that you haven't seen, that's what faith is. And in the New Testament, the master teacher Jesus, speaking to the apostle Thomas, who was also known as Doubting Thomas, he said, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. But blessed are they that have not seen and still have believed. So what we teach and what we believe is that God is everywhere present, both inside and outside of us. As Joyce was saying, as Reverend Joyce was saying, we connect with that both within us and without us, which is existent in each and every one of us. When you look in the eyes of another person, you're looking directly into the eyes of God, directly into the eyes of the divine, in each and every one of us. That thing, we have lots of different names for it. We call it first cause, we call it the thing itself, and if we're comfortable with that, we call it spirit or we call it God. The thing within each of us, call it intuition if you like, or inspiration. Turning to that within is what we call faith. Now, I know most of you here in Westlake don't know me, but I love acronyms when I talk, and to remind me of what faith means to me, I like F-A-I-T-H, finding answers in the heart. Finding answers in the heart. Because when we look within, using, Dr. Holmes wrote, there's one life, that life is God, and that life is my life now. Some people misquote that and say, there's one life, that life is God's life. That's not what he wrote. He wrote, there's one life, that life is God, and that life is my life now. So when we do our affirmative prayer and we say, and we start at the beginning of treatment addressing the divine, whether it's in your own mind, inside or outside, there's one. There's only one, and I connect with that one now. Whether you think of God as the forest, as you said, or quiet place, or in the eyes of another person, when you're connecting with that one and being totally present, you're doing what Dr. Holmes taught us. There's one life, that life is God, and that life is my life now. Because, barriers and challenges come up for us, and when they do, we need to find a way into that power, to our divine intuition, to our divine inspiration to find a solution. Now, the barriers that these Olympians face in the Olympics, in their sport, like just getting to the Olympics costs $1 zillion. And going and doing this crazy stuff they do with no limitations, these are very real challenges that they themselves tear down every day because they have complete faith that they can do it. That's the way that they go and do it. And a lot of times, we may face things that we think there's no way around, or there's no way over, or there's no way through. But just because we think that doesn't mean that there's not a way. We just haven't discovered what it is yet, and that's where faith comes in. We can always remind ourselves that there is that within me that knows what to do and knows what to say, and I turn to that now. Dr. Holmes doesn't even teach that we have to know what it is or what the answer will be, just that there is an answer. Just that there is that within me that knows. And I turn to that now, and we do that. That's called going with faith, going on faith. I'm going to go in a different direction for a minute. I'm going to tell you a story. First of all, let me ask you, how many of you guys use computers? Everybody. Okay, now keep your hands up. How many of you back up your data? Okay, keep your hands up if you do this. How many of you back up your data every month? Every week? Every day? Sandra and I. That's it, every day. And Steve Middleman. Okay. I'm a composer and a producer. That's what I do in the daytime when I'm not up here speaking. And in today's day and age, being a music composer, video composer, that means creating lots and lots and lots and lots of data. I record audio and video like everybody uses Microsoft Office. And at 10 megabytes per mono minute, you could I mean, it's like an album of music is gigabytes and gigabytes of storage. And all of my clients expect me to keep their projects safe for them in perpetuity, because they might come back a year later and say, oh, that 30-second spot we want to turn it into a 15-second spot. They expect you to just pull it up and edit it and fix it and put it back out again. So all of the projects that I've worked on in the 35 years, in the 20-plus years I've been doing this with computers, I've had to keep safe. And that means I back up everything multiple times and to the cloud and keep everything safe, because I don't own this stuff. I just kind of have to take care of it for them. So I have tons and tons of stuff. And every night, all night long, my computer backs itself up to the cloud. First, it backs itself up locally in the studio, and then it backs itself up to a service that I pay for in the cloud. And by now, you're asking, what does this have to do with science of mind? Well, my talk today is called The Way In, and this is a story about a day when I desperately needed to find a way back into my faith, because I woke up one Saturday recently, and I went into the studio, and all of my hard drives on my computer were locked. And when I would click on one, it would say, you don't have permission to access this drive. I didn't have permission to access all of my information. And I know a lot about the hardware and the software. In my case, it's Macintosh, OS 10. And I do everything to make sure that this stuff is safe. I know you probably know the joke about the guy who prays every day to God and says, "Dear God, let me win the lottery." You know this story? Dear God, let me win the lottery. Let me win the lottery. When he finally dies and he goes to heaven and he's standing in front of the pearly gates and he finally meets God and he says, "Why hast thou forsaken me, God?" And God says, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I prayed every day to win the lottery and you never let it happen." And God said to him, looks in his eyes lovingly and says, "My son, you could have helped. You could have bought a ticket." What he means is, yes, pray, but treat, but move your feet. Meaning do the stuff that's yours to do to make sure that things are taken care of. And I did all that stuff. I back up all my data. I back up in the cloud. Well, on this particular day, I was starting to get really nervous. I was starting to get really scared. And I had just upgraded to a new computer, a new version of Mac OS 10, and it had been a bit of a bumpy ride. There had been some buggy stuff going on, but I never worry about that stuff because I back up everything so many times. The computer itself could blow up, and I would go to the wall and pull extra hard drives off the wall, and I could go to a different computer and get right back to work. But somehow, something had happened overnight to change all of the permissions in my user account, locking me out of my data and making it impossible for me to do anything. But I had faith because I've had a lot of experience using this operating system and I've had this kind of stuff happen to me before, not quite this serious, but I have all the tools, you know. I have Disk Warrior, and I have Norton, and I have all the stuff that helps you get back to work, and I never have to call tech support. I pay for it, but I never have to call it. And so I went to work, you know, trying a bunch of options to unlock my drives on my own, and nothing worked. Hours went by, and I finally did call Apple Care. 3 hours on the phone with them. I still couldn't get my drives, and now my computer wouldn't start up. You know, all the stuff they were telling me how to do, I was saying, that's not the thing to do. No, just try it. And it wouldn't start up. And then they told me at 5 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon that I had to take my computer to the Apple store. Now, I had church the next morning. I had music to do. I was really starting to get upset, very nervous. I know I should have immediately sat down and started to treat. I mean, that's what we do to calm ourselves, to center ourselves. But anybody ever be too upset to do spiritual practice? You know, any practitioners here? Other ministers, okay? Anybody ever be just, you know, something happens in your life and you might have the thought, I should treat, but you don't have the stomach for it at that moment. You're just too nervous, too upset. Well, I was getting really, really nervous. You know, a year of spiritual practice. This is exactly why we do practice. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. This is why we do it. Because there are times when things aren't easy, but if you've practiced, it's a little bit easier. We practice to save for a rainy day. Because I don't know about you, but finding my faith in a crisis is nearly impossible. That's the tough time. Doing my spiritual practice on a daily basis makes it easier for me to remember the things that I need to do. And John F. Kennedy famously said, you know, the time to fix the roof is in the summertime because it's really hard to do when it's raining outside. And this Saturday afternoon was turning into a really bleak and rainy day. I still had my old computer, so I got an idea. I said, okay, I'll take all the hard drives out of the new computer, and I'll put them back in the old computer. And that was a disaster, too, because they had already been updated to the new computer, and the old computer couldn't even see them. And now I'm starting to really get freaked out. And so I go into the kitchen, and Sharon, I'm telling her the story, and I'm saying, I don't know what to do, which for me is kind of unusual. I don't know what to do, and she knew what to do. She started a treat. She started to pray, and she called our entire practitioner corps, and she put them to work treating for me, too, and knowing the truth that there was a solution, even if we didn't know in that moment what the solution was. I felt like that, you know that Alfred Hitchcock movie Vertigo with Jimmy Stewart? I felt like that spot where he gets really dizzy and everything goes in and out of focus. It was really, that was my experience at that moment. I had 2 computers on the floor of my studio, open and gutted, all the components, my life's work sitting all across the floor, and I felt like John McClane in that movie, Die Hard. Think, 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 and I couldn't think of what to do. So Sharon's praying, and my thoughts are going to the worst case scenario. I won't finish my projects. They'll fire me. They'll sue me for delaying the work. I'm out of business. It's $1 million. I mean, it's like, anybody ever have a thought that was not to your highest good, ever? They call it dark night of the soul, you know, when you toss and turn all night thinking about how terrible things are going to turn out tomorrow. What was it that they say? The rumination is always worse than the confrontation. We always think about it over and over and over again. So Sharon's treating, because the one thing that we know is that treatment works, right? Ours or somebody else's, it doesn't matter. Somebody focusing on the spiritual truth changes things, because we don't actually treat to change the facts in our life. You know, we sometimes get the rap of being the parking spot religion. You know, I'll treat for the right parking spot and I'll get in the parking lot. No, there's the perfect parking spot. We actually don't treat to change the facts in our life. We treat to change our relationship to the facts in our life. And when we can do that, when we can change our relationship to the facts in our life, the facts have a way of changing. And I needed the facts in my life to change at that moment, because the facts that were in front of me in the studio with the computer on the floor and all the hard drives on the floor, they were scaring the crap out of me at that moment. Norman Vincent Peale says, if you change your thoughts, you'll change your life. And I needed to desperately change what I was thinking. I needed to find that way in, the way back to my faith, that things would turn out okay. When the day started, even though things weren't going that well, I still had faith, because I knew all these things would work, and they'd always worked in the past. But as I ticked them off one by one, my faith started to go down, and my fear started to go up. And they're 2 sides of the same coin. Faith on one side, fear on the other side. So I went in the bathroom, and I washed my face, and I looked right in the mirror at myself, and I took a breath, and I said what my first practitioner told me to say when I was afraid. I looked in the mirror, and I said, "You're wonderful, 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 and you know what to do." And I had tears in my eyes, and in my beautiful blue eyes, I had tears. And I looked back in my eyes one more time, and I said, "You're wonderful, 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 and you know what to," and instantly I had the thought, what I needed to do. I knew what I needed to do. I needed to go back in the studio and take all the hard drives and put them back in my new computer and start it up from the DVD that came with it and install a completely brand new system on it, because all my data somewhere is backed up. I know it is. And start it up with the new, and then I had to call Apple, and regardless of what they said, I had to say, I need a level 2 OS 10 supervisor on the phone. I won't talk to anybody else. And 15 minutes later, I got a guy on the phone, and this guy taught me the most amazing lesson I've ever learned about computers, and the most amazing lesson I've ever learned about life, too. He taught me how to log into my computer as the root. Anybody ever done this? No? Not logging in with a different user account, but logging into the computer without a user account, logging in as the computer itself. Most of the time, they won't teach you how to do this, because when you log in as the root, there are no limitations to what you can do. Now, you have to be extremely careful when you log in as the root, because you have unlimited power. You can do anything. You can delete files that you're not supposed to delete that will disable your computer. You can completely ruin your operating system. They don't teach you how to do this because it's very dangerous to have unlimited power unless you're using it with the proper consciousness. Right. But once I logged in as root, I was instantly able to see and use all of my data again. Everything was unlocked. And after some housekeeping, about 16 hours of erasing drives and recopying them and putting the data back on, I was able to get back to work with no problems at all. And I think we're just like our computers in this way. Our body is the hardware. Our human self is the user account. And God, Spirit, is the root. When we log into ourselves as the root, we're bypassing any human stuff that we might have, and we're using our system from a place of no limitations, just like the Olympic athletes. This is what they're doing all the time. Think of the issues and challenges that they face that we can all instantly unlock simply by logging in as the root. By going directly to God and bypassing any human stuff that we put on the facts and situations in our lives, we can get right back to work. When Sharon and I started allowing our sons, Jesse and Tyler, to use computers, we created user accounts for them that had limitations on them, so they wouldn't accidentally view adult content on the web, or they wouldn't accidentally disable their computer so that it wouldn't start up. They couldn't get in and do their homework. Okay? Well, I think that we also often put these kind of limitations on our human user accounts, the ones that run this hardware. Our human selves are these fantastic biological, mental, and spiritual machines, and the creative intelligence of the universe created us to live wonderful, fantastic lives, to use its power, all of its power, all the time, in everything that we do. But we limit ourselves by what we think and what we believe. All of the young athletes at the Olympic Games are doing everything that they do by bypassing these limitations. Just like the 4-minute mile. People thought you couldn't run the 4-minute mile, and then you could. And these kids, they just ignore all those perceived limitations, and they go faster and higher, and they do quads and doubles and triples. And people say to them, you know, you can't do that. Well, yes, you can. Yes, I can. Impossible is also pronounced I'm possible. The other day, Dr. Jim Lockard posted an article on Facebook about the mental training that these athletes use to prepare, and here are some of the things that they do. See if any of these sound familiar to you. 1, visualize the outcome that you want. Sounds like the mental equivalent to me, spiritual prototype. 2, meditate daily. They get quiet. They do spiritual practice. They become one with themselves and with the others who they do their sports with. And 3, evict the obnoxious roommate in your head and set smarter goals. That's 4. So they turn to truth within. They get rid of all that yeah, but stuff, and they turn to truth within. And the last one is go with the flow. That's have faith. Go with the flow. I'm kind of a type A personality. Sharon always tells me that I got to go with the flow. I often go, yeah, but I want to make things happen this way, you know? Things happen the way they need to unfold perfectly. And if you're a type A personality like me, maybe I'm just getting in the way of things unfolding and going with the flow. And Sharon's going, uh-huh. The other day in Sochi, an American freestyle snowboarder named Sage Kostenberg. Anybody watch him? He finished his first run in 7th place, well off the podium. He knew that he was going to have to do something really extra special to get on the podium, and he turned to his coach and said, I think I'm going to try a 1620 with a Japan grab. Now, that's a jump where you go around 360 degrees 4 times, and you go around another 180 degrees, so it's 4.5 times around, and you grab your toes from behind through your legs. Now, I've been flat on the couch with a bad back for 2 weeks, so I'm not even going to try this. And his coach said to him, "Have you ever even tried that in practice?" No. But he had seen it on a YouTube video. Had a picture in mind of what it looked like, and he knew that he could do it. So he went for it. He dropped in, he flew off the mountain, up to the big jump, went around 4.5 times, reached through his legs, grabbed his toes, stuck the landing, won the gold. Doing something he'd never done before, and that even his coach said to him, "Have you ever tried that, even in practice?" He'd never even done it in practice before. He had just seen it on YouTube. Amazing. You see something on YouTube, and it's possible, right? Isn't that good? So I'm telling you, these kids are all logged in as the root all the time. That's how they do what seems impossible. My friends, please don't limit yourself to the restrictions that you yourself have imposed on your user account. Each of us can and should live the life that we've been brought here to live. Every day we can choose to log into ourselves as the root, our divine self, unlock every corner of our consciousness, and use it with no limitations. Do fantastic things. Break the 4-minute mile. Do the 16:20 with the Japan grab in whatever business or lifestyle you have. There's always that thing that you never tried, but you just saw it on YouTube. There's that within each of us that knows the solution for every situation. Have faith. Find your answers in the heart, because that's where they are. So thanks for letting me talk today. Namaste. Have a great day.